Hello, and welcome back to the world of Wysteria. We will now continue reading part 2 of chapter 41. As he stood on the balcony waiting for Charlotte, Will fought back the nervous tension he felt rising inside him. He would need to control his body today, quickly, under pressure, and in foreign surroundings. He'd done well in dangerous circumstances before, and he'd altered himself in other worlds. But if anxiety, fear, or doubt infested his mind, his performance would suffer, and he needed to be at his best, or better. For much the same reason, Will had decided to lay aside any doubts he had about Charlotte's reliability. There would be no time for second-guessing once they jumped from Wysteria. He had to have complete confidence in her. He'd spent some time last night pondering his 4 relationships with these 3 women. Emily in one world, Lily in another, and Charlotte in both. It was a strange 4-sided triangle, with Charlotte, in some sense, the other woman in 2 different relationships with the same man. In the end, he concluded that whatever her feelings for him, Charlotte was a true friend to Emily, certainly not her enemy. He hadn't checked his watch, but it seemed almost an hour before he finally felt someone cross into his world. Following the flutter in his midsection came the scent. It was Charlotte, but she wasn't alone. There were 2 vibrations. Had she found a scout? That would be welcome news. Will turned and watched the vibrations condense into a mist, out of which 2 figures holding hands emerged. One Charlotte, and the other... "Look who I found," Charlotte proudly announced. It was Daniel, the cocky young bounty hunter who, with his powerful henchmen, had tried to snatch Emily in the tavern. "What's he doing here?" Will demanded to know, readying himself for a fight. Had he been wrong about Charlotte after all? Were she and Daniel friends, as he had claimed, but she had denied? Or was he her prisoner? "It's okay, Will," she said. "He came semi-voluntarily." "Why?" he asked, still on his guard. "To help us." "Help us?" he said. "Do you know who he is?" "Yes, I do," she answered. "But he attacked Emily. He tried to kidnap her." "I know, but let me explain." "Please," said Daniel, now speaking up, as Will stared daggers at his fearful eyes. "I didn't understand. He lied to me." "Who?" Will asked him. "Anton," he answered, "the man who was with me. He told me she was a criminal, that both of you were." "We were criminals?" "Yes," Daniel insisted. "That's why there was a bounty on her." Will relaxed, but only somewhat. "Just listen to his side of the story," said Charlotte, still with a hold on her fellow traveler. "If you still don't trust him, you can give him a thrashing and send him on his way." "What?" Daniel exclaimed, looking at her. "A thrashing? But you said—" "Quiet," she admonished him. "Misinformed or not, You should have known better. If we didn't need your help, I would have given you much worse the moment I saw you." "How can he help us?" asked Will. "He's a scout. A good one," she said. "He could give us the edge we need." "He could also lead us into a trap," he replied. "But I'll hear him out." "Good," said Charlotte. She then turned to Daniel. "I'm letting you go, but you better not try to bolt," she warned him. "I agreed to help you," he said, "even though I'm not sure what you want me to do." "You didn't tell him," said Will. "I told him Emily had been captured," she said, "but I wanted to talk to you before I gave him any more information." Smart, he thought. "So, you're willing to help us," Will said to his one-time foe and now potential ally. "Why? To avoid Charlotte's wrath?" "I want to help," he said. "After what I did, what I tried to do. It's true. I should have known Anton's story was a lie. But he was convincing. And with the hefty reward Nathan was offering, I wanted to believe him. Still, I would never have helped him if I'd known the real story." Will had assumed that Daniel, the talkative one, was in charge of that operation, while Anton, his silent companion, was merely hired muscle. "What exactly did he tell you?" Will asked him. "That Emily was a relic thief," he said. "That she tried to seduce Nathan in order to steal some valuable artifacts." "What?" cried Charlotte, incensed at the slander. "Anton said that she'd done it before, to some of Nathan's guests," Daniel continued. "She stole things and brought them back here, to your world. And since you knew they were stolen, you were guilty as well." According to him, Nathan wanted her brought in so that he could talk to her, convince her to return the stolen items. It sounded reasonable. "Too reasonable for Nathan," Charlotte countered. "I know," he said. "Given his less than honorable reputation, I should have checked around. If the story were true, others would have heard about it. Later, after the fight, I did check, and things didn't add up. I began to realize that I'd probably made a huge mistake. Then I heard rumors about a battle, a band of hardy drifters, driven off by a couple of youngsters. I assume that was you," he queried. Will answered with a nod. At that point, I guessed the truth, that Nathan had other motives for wanting to get his hands on Emily. I tried to talk to Nathan, but he was evasive, telling me I should drop it. I considered coming by, to explain, to apologize, but I didn't. Then, today, Charlotte caught up with me and told me what had happened, that Nathan had Emily snatched, and I agreed to help. Apparently, you could use a scout. Will had no reason to doubt his story, their story, but he couldn't help being suspicious. In the tavern, Daniel had claimed that he'd found them by way of their mutual friend, Charlotte. And now, at this crucial moment, here they were, together. How did you come across him? He asked Charlotte. Last night, a friend of mine gave me a lead on someone he believed was a scout, she told him. I chased it for a while, but had no luck, and finally had to leave. Tonight, instead of coming straight here, I decided to check one more location, and as luck would have it, he was there. I slapped him a few times before he persuaded me to listen, she said. I did, and I think I believe him. It's your call, though. It was a tough decision. The information Daniel could obtain for them would make the rescue much easier. On the other hand, he might double-cross them and alert Nathan that they were coming. Nathan would then have time to move Emily and prepare an ambush. What exactly are you planning to do? Daniel asked. Do you need me to help you find a few professionals? Or gather an army? That's probably what it would take to break her out. These words struck home and were enough to tip the balance. They needed every advantage they could get. Wait here, said Will. He went inside and retrieved the weapons from their covert vault. Then, putting the daggers in his back pocket and carrying the crossbow, quarrels, and sword in his hands, he came back out onto the balcony. Daniel's eyes widened as he saw Will return, armed to the teeth. Are those real? He asked. Quite, said Will. Where did you get them? He inquired, a suspicious note in his voice. They're not stolen, said Charlotte, if that's what you're wondering. These were confiscated from the drifters who attacked us in that battle you heard about. So you were there too? For part of it, she answered. We're going after Emily, Will told him. Today. Just you two? He asked, sounding surprised and dubious. Those will certainly help, he said, glancing at the weapons. But still, I don't see how. We have a plan, said Will, but we need more information about where they're holding her. He then remembered that Charlotte was supposed to leave Emily another message. I'd almost forgotten. Did you hear from Emily? He asked her. Oh, yes, I did, she said. It was a short reply. No details about the room she's in. Just that several guards are always there, and Nathan comes and goes. She said we should be careful, and that she loves us both. How are you able to get in touch with her? Daniel asked, but Charlotte ignored his question. I don't expect you to ride into battle with us, Will said to him. But we'd like to know what we'll be facing when we jump in. Can you get a look at the place for us, without them detecting you? Yes, he answered. I can do that. Will explained what information they needed. The layout of the room, general dimensions, location of doors, placement of potential obstacles such as furniture, the number of guards, and where they were in relation to Emily. And lastly, whether Nathan himself was present. If Nathan's not there, we'll make our move, and you can leave, he said. If he is, we'll wait for a while and ask you to check again. What if he doesn't leave? Daniel asked. Will you wait till tomorrow? No, he said. We're getting her back today." "Very well," said Daniel. "It won't take me long, so whenever you're ready." "Out of curiosity," said Will, "how will you be able to see but not be seen?" "The trick," he replied, "is to come out of the darkness just enough to let in some light, but not enough to create any physical presence, not even the mist. Then you have to hover in the twilight. I'm not as stealthy as some. If I stay there very long, I begin to slip. I may have to bounce in and out a few times to get the information you want." "And Nathan won't sense you entering his world?" Will asked him. "I doubt it," he said. "There's always traffic there. And even if he notices the intrusion, as long as I stay in the twilight, he wouldn't know who or where I was." "Okay," said Will, satisfied with his answers. "Then I guess we're ready." He looked at Charlotte, who nodded in agreement. "If you do this for us," he said to Daniel, "you can consider your debt paid in full." "But if you double-cross us," Charlotte quickly added, "your crimes will be known in every corner of the universe. You'll spend the rest of your days an outcast, running from me." "As it should be," replied their scout, offering a polite bow before vanishing into the darkness. And that concludes part 2 of chapter 41. And we'll be right back with part 3.